Now we start getting exciting. Here's the first challenge. They met again on Sunday night, nervous but determined. Bellecha looked at the four teens. "Are you clear on what's going to happen?" he asked. "I don't want Pekame to go all squirmy when he finds himself in a different place." James glared at Bellecha. He wasn't happy to be here, but he never backed down once he had committed. Tima touched his arm. She answered Bellecha, "We told you we'd do this." Bellecha looked at the old man, measuring him. "Once. We agreed to give you one shot." Bellecha grinned. "You still think I'm making this up, don't you?" Billy shrugged. "We'll see." Bellecha nodded. "When we land, you head straight up the hill toward the fire. You'll meet Maylim there. She's the teacher for this challenge. I'll stay with the stone and keep the portal open." "Why aren't you coming?" Billy glared at him suspiciously. "Two reasons. Well, three. First is, if I keep the portal open, you'll get back faster, if you live through the challenge. Second, you have to learn the lessons and go through the challenge on your own. If I'm there, you won't look for your solutions. You'll look for mine. That won't work." Rory noticed he wasn't saying any more. "What's the third reason?" Bellecha looked a bit embarrassed. "Well, Maylim and I go back, and she's got a pretty sharp tongue, and she likes to use it on me." Billy whistled. "The great and powerful warrior is a little afraid of someone? Just wait till you meet her. If you want some advice, be polite." Rory was ready to get things started. "Let's do this." As before, they sat around the stone. Bellecha began to glow and change, becoming a pulsing orb of light hovering over them. The glittering fog filled the pit, and threads appeared all around. Bellecha grabbed one end, and with a quick jerk, they were soon speeding along a wide ribbon of light through the web. The same rush of freedom filled Rory, and he was disappointed when Bellecha called, "Get ready! Now!" They bumped down in a rocky clearing along a rough mountain trail. Standing, Rory looked around. This felt different than New Mexico. There was more water in the air and less oxygen. He could tell they were in high mountains. Bellecha pointed up the trail toward the top. "That way. I'll wait here." "I think I see a fire," said Tima. "Go on," ordered Bellecha. "She's expecting you." Billy flashed a grin. "Sure you don't want to come?" Bellecha glared at him. "No worries. I'll give her a kiss for you." Bellecha muttered, "Try it, boy. She'll rip your lips off." They headed up the steep trail. "Rory," Tima said, looking up at the sky, "do you notice that the stars are different?" Rory glanced up, then stopped, staring. "Well, that can't be." "What?" "I can see Taurus, and look, there are the seven sisters, the Pleiades. My dad used to point them out all the time because so many ancient people had origin myths about them." "And what's strange about that?" asked Billy. "The Pleiades aren't visible in the summer, at least not in New Mexico." "Really? Where can you see them?" asked Tima. "In the southern hemisphere. We would see them when we were on digs in Peru. In fact, that's what this feels like, the high mountains of the Andes." Tima nodded. "I had a feeling we were in a different place." They continued up the path. The thin air and steep grade made conversation hard. The path swung around a huge rock wall and began to circle up again into darkness. At the base of the bare stone wall was a small cave. In front of the mouth of the cave, a fire burned. Between the fire and the cave sat a figure. A pot that hung over the fire, bubbled and gave off a wonderful smell. Looking up as they approached, a small, compact woman stood and stirred the pot. The aroma reached out to them. "Who's hungry?" she asked with a welcoming smile. As one, they stepped forward, any worry or shyness torn away by the sudden growling of their bellies. Soon they sat in a semicircle just inside the cave, busily inhaling bowls of the wonderful stew. As he ate, Rory looked around. The cave didn't go back far. The roof was blackened from thousands of fires. The walls had been worn smooth by countless years of hands passing over them. There are some paintings on the walls that resembled the symbols etched on their stone. The ground was sand, comfortable to sit on, and he expected not bad to sleep on either. The cave and the fire and the food all gave a feeling of safety, security, home. He felt he had been here before and was glad to come back. The others also seemed to relax. The old lady was calmness itself. Her lined face gently smiled as she watched them eat. She seemed glad they were here and happy they were enjoying the food. When his eyes met hers, she smiled extra big. "So, you're traveling with the old raccoon." "Raccoon?" asked Rory. She nodded. "Bellagha. He's a raccoon if there ever was one. Plenty smart, plenty mean if necessary. Always getting into things and leaving a mess. I guess he was too scared to come up with you." Billy grinned. "He said he would get in the way of our learning." "More likely he knew he'd get in the way of my cooking pot when I tossed it at his head. He's a trickster, that one." "How'd he get you to come?" Tima answered. "He told us the Krolodutes would kill us and everyone we know if we didn't learn how to stop them." Billy said, "We told him we'd give him one chance to convince us. Is that what you're going to do?" The old woman's face changed. Rory had seen that look on the face of teachers. It never came before anything pleasant. In an instant, Mayalim unbent and expanded, transforming into a huge, horrifying creature, filling the entire opening of the cave. Her eyes burned with flames, her mouth unhinged and gaped open, revealing a boiling universe of stars and suns boiling inside the huge being. It bellowed an earth-shaking roar of rage. Rory understood why Bellagha had stayed behind. They all cowered back, looking desperately for a way to escape. The thing that had been Mayalim was blocking the mouth of the cave, and there was no back exit. They were trapped inside a cave in front of a huge, blazing, angry creature in a place they didn't know. Rory's mouth went dry, and he looked at Billy, thinking he might have some ideas, but Billy shook his head. Rory had an inspiration. He dropped to his knees in front of the thing, bowed deeply. He stammered, We didn't mean to be disrespectful. We just don't know what's going on, and we were hoping you would tell us something about it." Then he bowed again. He motioned frantically to the others, and they bowed low also. Slowly, very slowly, the fiery creature began to fade and fold in upon itself. Before their frightened eyes, the thing again became Mayalim. It was as if they had all imagined the transformation. As they watched, even the stern look on her face relaxed, and before them, bent and smiling, once again, was the calm old lady. However, there was no question that they really wanted to stay on her good side. Mayalim spoke as if nothing unusual had happened. "I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to tell you some things. Then it is your responsibility to do what you wish." She looked at the four. "Sit down," she ordered. "I'm going to provide 3 things. Each of your challenges will include the same 3 things. The first is a story." "Is the story true?" asked asked Tima. "There is no truth. There is useful or not useful. The second thing I will give is a piece of the puzzle. The third will be the challenge. You will solve the challenge by using the information in the story and the piece of the puzzle." She looked around with a stern look. "It is time to begin." Looking at the 4 skeptical teens, she nodded to herself. "Words won't do. I'll begin by showing you who you are." Mayalim closed her eyes and struck the ground with her stick. As the staff struck the ground the first time, she began to grow. Her body stretched taller and thinner. The staff struck the ground a second time, and her face and arms disappeared. She was transforming into a writhing snake, standing on its tail, reaching up to the sky, silhouetted by the fire that was again roaring higher, filling the entrance to the cave. The Mayalim serpent stretched taller than the mouth of the cave. From where her hands had been, the staff fell to the ground. As her staff struck the ground the third time, the air filled with a glowing, sparkling mist. The Mayalim snake, writhing in the entrance, transfixed Rory's gaze. Fog, filled with pulsing points of light, billowed in front of his eyes, making it harder and harder to see her. Suddenly he realized that the mist wasn't blocking his view. She was fading. He could see the sparkling points in the mist in front of her. Behind her he could see the fire blazing higher and higher through her undulating body. James screamed, What's happening to me?" Rory looked over. James was also fading away. "I can see right through my hand," yelled James in a panic. "Dude, calm down," said Billy. "Ah!" screamed James. "You're fading too." Rory looked at Billy. Even with the light of the roaring fire, Billy was fading away. "We're all fading," said Tima. "Look at your hands." Rory looked down. He could see right through his hands. Even as he looked, they vanished. It was the weirdest sensation. They hadn't turned invisible. They had dissolved into the mist. The rest of his body was fading, but somehow he was still there, just in a different form than he had ever experienced. He tried to take a deep breath, but he couldn't. He didn't have lungs. It was a weird sensation. Not particularly bad. It wasn't like he was dying. He couldn't breathe, but he didn't need to. It came to him. I'm part of the mist. Here, but not here. He heard Tima ask, "Can you hear me?" "Of course," replied Billy. "Where are you?" yelled James. Rory realized he could see in all directions, not just one like usual. The entire cave was filled with the glowing mist, and he was everywhere in it. Tima's voice cut through his thoughts, calm and thoughtful. "Can you see in all directions, too?" "Yeah," said Billy, excited. "It's like I have eyes in the back of my head, the sides, too." "But you don't have a head!" yelled James. "None of us do. We don't exist." Mayalim's voice cut through his panic. "Of course you exist. If you did not exist, how could you be making such a racket?" This did not calm James at all. "You stole my body! Give it back! Give it back!" "James," reasoned Tima, "calm down. We are obviously supposed to be learning something here, and you're not helping." Mayalim's voice came from the front of the cave. "Exactly. Now I will explain." 3 hand claps rang out, and the 4 teens, once again in their familiar forms, dropped to the ground. The air in the cave was suddenly clear of the mist. Mayalim slowly faded into form and again stood before them. She spoke, her voice the rush of wind roaring through unaccountable years. "I have shown you. You have felt it. You have experienced what you truly are. These bodies are the clothes you wear for an instant of experience. I have not asked you to understand. I have forced you to experience. You now know." Rory felt each word vibrate through him. He knew she was right. Mayalim picked up her staff again and pointed to the sand in front of her. Shaken, they took their places. Mayalim drew a large oval in the sand. She spoke as she drew. "From the beginning of existence, there has been aware energy. This energy has 2 very basic drives, to share and to experience. In order to share, energy came together, forming spheres." "Spheres?" asked Tima. "Not one?" "Countless spheres formed," Mayalim replied. "At first the energy moved together into one, but as differing interests arose, new spheres formed. Energy seeking certain experiences is drawn to a similar energy to form a sphere. There are as many spheres as there are interests. It's like in your school, where there are groups interested in sports, in singing, in theater." Mayalim began to draw lines extending out from the egg. "The second drive is to experience, to learn and create. In order to experience, each sphere extended energy into the worlds, becoming entities." "You mean that everything we see is an extension from these spheres?" asked Billy. "No," answered Mayalim. "Everything is not of the spheres. On this planet, countless objects exist, and only a small number come from a sphere." "Are the Adama the extensions of the spheres?" asked Rory. "Yes. Every light weaver is from a sphere. We're not sure, but we suspect that the Krolodutes are also sphere extensions. However, no Adama has ever seen a sphere that would extend such creatures." Rory asked, "What happens when it dies?" "When the energy has experienced what it wishes, it returns to the sphere. The energy again becomes part of the sphere and shares the experience with the whole." She looked at them. "This process continues as it has continued from the beginning of the spheres until now." She sat down, her head at their level. That is the end of the story. And that is the end of Chapter 7.